The Timeline is a Blue Wire podcast. Welcome to the Timeline of Phoenix Suns podcast. Sam, we have actual basketball to talk about. How you doing?
I'm doing great. We are recording live from not Las Vegas. One of these years we'll get out to Summer League. This is not the year, but the Suns played a Summer League game. It was not the most beautiful result as far as Summer League games go, but they did play a game. My hype was at absolute maximum level for this game, Mike, going in. It was 11 p.m. on a Saturday night Eastern time, and I sat down, ice cream in hand, ready to feast on some Suns Summer League basketball and analyze to the best of my ability all of the new guys who are going to be on our full-time roster, hopefully going forward.
You know, I was watching this game, and admittedly, it's interesting to watch a game where you don't really care about the outcome very much, right? You're not watching it to see who wins or who loses in any way. It kind of felt like watching like the 2016 Suns or the 2017 Suns regular season games again. You're just watching it to see these guys and what their potential development could be. And I did find myself asking myself a question, and I want to ask you this. What is the point of Summer League in your mind? What do you think it's for?
That's a great question, actually, but you have to specify a little bit more. What is the point of Summer League for the organizations individually?
Yes, that is a great, because it's exactly where my brain went. Yeah.
Or for the fans or for the league. I forget who it was, but I actually just saw someone post like a financial thread on Twitter about how Summer League generates like $150 million in revenue for the NBA now or something, which is like 10 times what it did a decade ago. Like the way that the league has built out this extra basketball content that is not just like, this is not stuff that they just reserve and throw up on NBA TV. This is stuff that, because the summer is kind of quiet for live sports, this goes on ESPN, like the main ESPN channels, and like they sell the media rights to Summer League, and they post clips on social media, and fans are invested, and fans come out to Las Vegas. Like, for the league, what is Summer League for? It's just another profit stream, and a really effective one at that. For organizations, it's a chance to, evaluate the guys you just drafted. But to your point, what I think you're probably thinking, right, is like, you're not going to get that much out of, like, compared to your pre-draft workouts or all of the work you've already put in to really analyze these guys. What are you really going to get extra out of 3 or 4 Summer League games where the players know that the results don't really matter, right? Is that sort of what you're talking about?
Yeah.
I think it's more about, the two-way contracts and filling out the roster and kind of all that stuff, which becomes a little bit heightened under the new CBA. We used to not have two-way contracts, and not every team had a G League affiliate. So I think there are some things that take on more importance that maybe weren't really in organizations' minds when Summer League first started in like 2011 or whatever.
I want to first start by saying I really enjoy it. And I've gone 4 or 5 times, and I've enjoyed that a lot as well. In that, I think it's a good product. It's not great basketball, but I think the idea when you're a team that has a really high draft pick, the idea of introducing those players to those fans in a scenario that's not just the regular season, where you could go and sort of like party and have fun and get excited about them, is a cool idea. And part of me was like, is that all it's for? Is that all it's for? Because like, I'm watching the Suns play, and this is what led me to this thought process, right? And I'm watching the Suns play without good guard play, and two players that they drafted. That in a minute. Yeah, 2 players that they drafted that are desperate for a guard, right? And I find myself thinking, the Suns have so much guard play on their team right now in the combination of Devin Booker, Bradley Beal, and so much gravity with Kevin Durant, and now of course Monte Morris being able to help them out. They didn't draft these guys to play them without guards. They're putting them, they're throwing him into this fire essentially and saying, yeah, whatever, just do whatever you can. So we'll talk about how they played and all that with that situation in hand. But I find myself thinking they're not learning anything from this as an organization at all. Now, maybe they're looking at some other guys in the roster. The Suns traditionally haven't had a lot of guys signed on to be two-way players or signed on to the roster after they've competed in Summer League. That is possible. Fred VanVleet, I think, is probably the best example of a player who was on the fringes or out of the league, found a way to Summer League, played really well, and then, of course, became a player making $40 million a year in the NBA now. So there is a way to be successful there where you're playing against NBA or fringe NBA players and impress people. But I do kind of wonder, do the teams like this? Do they want this? Is this something that they need in order to really find a way to analyze these guys? Or does it feel more like an obligation from a team perspective? Because I'm looking at the roster the Suns have out there, and part of me is like, do they just feel like they had to do this? Not that they want to.
Yeah,
I don't know. Maybe it is more about hype than anything else, and that is still good. The league needs marketing. I was there for the Lonzo Ball experience with the entire league's or entire arena sold out of Lakers fans and Suns fans there at the same time to watch their high draft picks. The two cities that are closest to Las Vegas, and it was a great time. And maybe it is just hype. That's all I was thinking.
Well, hype is a powerful aspect of the formula, right? And so we can't disregard hype entirely because that's what's driving the revenue stream ultimately. But no, I think every organization approaches this differently, and maybe some years, in particular the Suns, less than other organizations, don't take Summer League seriously. But I don't think that's what happened this year. I think honestly, what happened this year, based on other rumors that we've heard swirling around, is that the Suns probably did want Colin Gillespie to participate,
Yeah.
who, as we all know, is the guard who they signed already to a two-way contract for next year. He's occupying one of their three two-way spots. Another one is going to Jalen Bridges. The third spot is open as of now. And a guard who has played a tiny bit in the NBA, averaged triple-double in the G League last year, and would have been able easily, I think, to fulfill that role that you're talking about, that void that currently exists on the Suns Summer League roster. And it sounds like maybe he just has some discomfort or some sort of injury. We haven't gotten any exact confirmation about it, but that's sort of what people are saying behind the scenes. So I have a feeling they wanted him to play and he just can't, had to drop out for whatever reason. And then they were like, all right, we just got to roll with what we have and see if maybe someone steps up in his absence and earns that third two-way spot through the process. Like, they have Bowie on the roster, who's this 5-year player at a Northwestern. He did not look impressive at all in game one, but like he's a guard.
And they've never played together before. Yeah.
Yeah. Well, neither has Gillespie and these other guys, right? So it's like, they have other guards on the roster, but I think something just fell apart with them and Gillespie. And because of that, they're trying to persevere through it. But to your point, like, for those who didn't watch the Suns' first Summer League game here against the Warriors, it happened at this point a couple days ago. They lost by 17. They shot 6 for 32 from deep. That's 18%. Now that I would not say is specifically on the guards. It's partially on the guards, but that's also just the fact that they happen to give us a roster full of non-shooters. Even the guys we really like, Ryan Dunn can't shoot. Oso Ighodaro can't shoot. David Roddy, good Lord, we got to talk about David Roddy.
Oh, yeah. I already forgot about him, yeah.
We got to talk about David Roddy on this episode, man. But, in addition to that, when you're talking about the guards, 13 assists to 19 turnovers as a team. The offense was fairly putrid for basically the whole game. And there were small wrinkles of positivity in there. Like, I think there are a couple of things we could talk about with Oso and Ryan. Dunn, I guess I'll have to call him Dunn. It sounds weird to just call him Ryan. It's like calling Book Devin. But yeah, for the most part, like, we don't have much to say about these guys as prospects on the offensive end because of how horrendous their guard play was in game one. And like another casualty of this was Jalen Bridges, who I mentioned has one of the Suns' two-way spots. He played 18. He did not start, but he played 18 minutes in this first game, took 4 shots, 2 for 4 from the field, 1 for 3 from deep, had 5 points, 3 rebounds. And like, this is one of the guys who you should be featuring as much as possible because he's going to actually maybe log some NBA minutes this year. And it felt like he didn't touch the ball more than a dozen times the entire game
Yeah.
because they didn't have a point guard who could get him the ball. And
He's a catch and shoot shooter.
He's
right?
a catch and
it's
shoot
hard to
wing,
be a catch
right?
and shoot shooter when you don't have a player capable, first one, of drawing gravity. Because I think the problem is not just guard play. It's like no offensive like star, if you will, on a summer league scale that's going to draw all the defensive attention and open up guys in the behind the 3-point line. They don't have that either. But yeah, if you're a catch and shoot guy and you have none of that, it's going to make it really difficult to get open shots. They did find a way to get him one at the very least. But yeah, I agree. But continue.
No, I mean, yeah. So we're not going to learn much. I mean, hopefully we've got 3 more games here, a couple in the next couple days. We're going to be covering the Wednesday game and the Friday game on playback. So I hope as many of you join us as possible because those games are on NBA TV, which means it's eligible for us to stream them on playback. If you have a League Pass subscription, I should point out. But yeah, I mean, I'm just not expecting much offensively from this team right now because I really think it was as simple as they wanted Gillespie to play. It fell through. They didn't have a good backup option. Maybe we'll get some good guard play in the next few days. But otherwise, the headline here is how did you feel about the 2 guys the Suns drafted, in the actual 2 rounds of the draft? How did you feel about Ryan Dunn and how did you feel about Oso Ighodaro?
I think they both are doing what was expected of them to do in these games. I think the person that stood out a little bit more was Ighodaro because of his ability to be an exciting offensive player. Like he had to start the game, he had that cut off the corner on a drive where he dunked it immediately, and it was just like, okay, holy shit, they have a guy who's athletic now. It's been so long since we've seen somebody that athletic in a Suns jersey and just running around all over the court and doing all kinds of things, screening, kind of being the offensive hub that we got used to seeing somebody like Nurkic as far as running DHOs do for the Suns. Ighodaro really stood out there.
Yeah.
And we'll talk more about him too. But and then for Dunn, I think on the other side of that, he just looks awesome defensively. His defensive skills are so solid that you can just watch where he is on the floor and understand what his intention is at all times. He did a lot of full court press where he was guarding guys all the way up and down the court. They experimented with the zone where he was at the head of that zone.
They played a good amount of zone, actually. So I mean, that's one thing. You say, what is Summer League for? Vince LaGarza, who's the Suns Summer League head coach, I imagine is having this frequent dialogue with Mike Budenholzer, who's sitting there. He's in the front row. Now, I don't know how much Bud is really talking with LaGarza about, like, these are the specific sets that I want you running. But I have to imagine that there's some crossover, right? And there's some general defensive concepts. It's not a coincidence if the Suns came out and played a lot of zone in that first game, and at times it looked pretty good. That might be something that you see a lot more out of the big league, the real Suns this season, once Bud gets a hold of the team. So we'll see. There are actual virtues, I think, to organizing your summer league play in a certain way.
I love it. Like, just in general, it's a time of year where there's no basketball and they give us a little bit of basketball. I don't want my questioning of what the purpose was to paint my opinion of it at all, because I really, really enjoy it. I did just find myself wondering from an organizational standpoint more than anything, what are they looking for when they do this? And at the very least, I think you get the opportunity to see Ighodaro or Ryan Dunn in a scenario where they are the main guys on the floor for the team, because they won't be that when they get to the Suns. Like when they're playing in the big leagues here, they're going to be fighting for minutes at the very best, or when they're on the court, probably the last option for a lot of the plays. Whereas in Summer League, you get to see what it looks like where they're number one at all times. Whereas Ryan Dunn, I mean, we could talk about his offense a little bit. Couldn't exactly find a way to shoot, or maybe didn't feel comfortable doing it in this scenario where part of me is like, I don't care, dude. I don't care if you go 3 for 20. I want to see you shoot 20 times. And dude, that's how I feel about Summer League.
Well, this is why I was going to say, like, you're right about you get to see them in an expanded role, but you're also wrong because of what happened specifically in game 1, where Ryan Dunn, I want you shooting 3 for 20. I don't want David Roddy shooting 3 for 20. And that's literally what happened in game 1 is Roddy was expected to now, I guess, be the, like, offensive hub of this team, which is something he's so clearly not capable of doing. He shot 4 for 14, 2 for 8 from deep. He had 12 points, 1 assist, and 4 turnovers. He was a minus 17. By the way, not a coincidence. David Roddy played 28 minutes. He was a minus 17. Ryan Dunn played 26 minutes. He was only a minus 5. The Suns played much better when David Roddy was not on the floor in game one. And this is a problem because not only is Roddy not capable of being this like high usage, I'm going to take the ball and like go, go, go. But like, I also think you can't just stick him in the corner and expect him to be good either. I don't know where you're at with Roddy at this point, but
He's
I'm
not
just like
an NBA player. That's where I'm at. He's just not an NBA player, and he's using a roster spot on a team that's expected to compete for a championship.
Yeah,
That's
so I
where
mean,
we're at.
Bud is sitting there, and James Jones is sitting there. Ishbia wasn't there, but like the other two big decision makers in this organization are there watching this right now, and I just have to think there's no way what's going through their heads watching David Roddy try to cook as the Suns fall down by 20 points in the second quarter of their first summer league game is like, oh yeah, we're not wasting a roster spot. We're good with David Roddy as the 15th guy. Like they gotta, he cannot continue to be on the roster.
I think for them,
if they're
in
serious,
particular,
they need a solution there.
they're probably desperate for him to play well. You know, we're talking about the purpose of summer league. If he plays well, they could probably trade him to some team that has a little bit of cap space, like the Jazz, for nothing and just give him away for free. But if he continues to play really badly, they're probably gonna have to eat all that cash. So if they cut him, which they might not, you know, they might just keep him, and I don't know what, because you can't aggregate, there's like no salary purpose for him either. Like there's really no reason to keep him on the team. But yeah, he was no good. And I almost feel like they need to sit him for future games entirely, because if you're gonna play Ryan Dunn and if you're gonna play Oso Ighodaro, it would be nice to put, if you have anyone who can shoot, even Bridges, in that starting lineup or whatever you could do, to put some shooting around them, because neither of them shoot. So if you're going to be the only two players who can't shoot, fine. But if the other guy who can't shoot has the ball in his hands at all times, that's going to make it really difficult for either of those guys to have the space necessary to do anything on offense. This is not to say that Ighodaro, with his high effort, can't still continue to do stuff. But in particular, I think it's going to be really difficult for Ryan Dunn, who, if you want him to be a cutter, fine. He's not going to get overplayed when he's behind the 3-point line. So you need someone drawing attention so he can cut back door. And there's nobody on the team going to do that now. And if you want him to shoot, okay, that's cool too. Not the quickest shot. So he kind of needs to be wide open in order to shoot. And right now he's kind of not, he's kind of in the middle of that, where he's not quite wide open because there's no reason to come off of him on guys. And he's not finding the way to cut, because even if he does, there's nobody to pass it to him. So
sure, yeah.
Tough scenario.
I will just say on Ryan Dunn, I appreciated the willingness for him to shoot, no hesitation. Now, we'll see if that persists, because it's one thing to be 0 for 3, which is what he is so far. It would be another thing if he's like 1 for 25, 10 games from now, right? And then maybe it's a little bit more difficult to keep up that confidence. But at least for now, this is a guy who only took about 1 3 per game at Virginia, and he took 3 in 26 minutes in his first game in Summer League.
Right.
Looked okay coming off his fingers. I think he'll get some to fall eventually. Obviously, the highlight with him is the defense, and I thought he was just totally as advertised on that end.
Mm-hmm.
I thought it was awesome, the fact that they just immediately stuck him on Brandon Podziemski, who's like a classic example of Podziemski's too good to be playing Summer League.
Mm-hmm.
He didn't have to be playing Summer League for the Warriors, even though he is going to year 2. He had a really good rookie season. He didn't have to be there. He chose to be there, and as the best player on the Warriors roster, the Suns just immediately took Ryan Dunn, stuck him on Podziemski, said, you know, pressure this guy full court. Don't allow yourself to get knocked off with off-ball screens. And he maneuvered around screens really, really well. He had a total of 3 steals and 2 blocks. He was just awesome defensively. I think he's going to make an impact from day one on that end.
Yeah, I mean, going into a game where he plays 25 minutes and having a combined 5 steals and blocks it's almost like you feel like he was going to do that, and then he did. And you don't want that to take away from how impressive it is to still do that in the game. 3 steals and 2 blocks as a wing defender. That's pretty impressive. I would like to see him get up on the boards a little bit more. He still had 4 rebounds, but if you're thinking about him as a potential small ball option, I want to see him have like a 10 rebound game
Yeah.
at some point. You know what I mean?
Oso too. For the record, if we're gonna talk about these two guys and kind of what some of the weaknesses are right now, um, I think I like the fact that Oso has that versatility, right? I think that's why they drafted him. And to your point, what you're talking about with Oso on offense is like you can run the offense through him. He brought the ball up the floor a couple of times. He ran some delay sets just like Nurkic would from the top of the key. Defensively, you felt the lack of size with Oso as like an NBA center because the Suns were kind of getting crushed on the defensive glass. They were playing him a decent amount in drop coverage, but like it's clear he's not really like I think he can play in drop, that's fine, but then offenses are going to seize that space and they're going to like welcome it, right? Like they're going to be like, okay, Oso's playing in drop. He has a 7 foot wingspan at most or whatever. So we're going to attack that space and really go at him. So yeah, I thought the lack of size was a little bit of apparent. Maybe one of these guys is able to start getting on the boards a little bit better, but we're going to need that from one of them eventually if they want to be playing the 5 consistently in the league.
Yeah, they have to do that. The Suns, you can put KD next to a guy and it helps out a little bit, but he's not like this rebounder that's out there grabbing everything available. I made the comparison, and even still in this game, it made me think of Brandon Clark, Oso Ighodaro to Brandon Clark. While you were talking, I looked up Brandon Clark's per game averages. Do you want to guess what his high in rebounds per game is in his career?
NBA career?
Yeah,
Clark's not. Wait, sorry, per game or like for a single game?
per game.
Per game, Clark's not a great rebounder. I'm gonna say like 5.5.
It's a great guess. A 5.6 career average,
Hey.
5.9 was a season where not quite his most minutes played. He did cap out at 10.2 per 36 in that time. I'm not
that's
sure.
actually good for a
Yeah.
guy of his size. 10.2 is rock solid.
6'8", 215. Ighodaro,
Yeah.
I think, is a little bit taller. We'll see what their official measurements are when they put them up on these websites. I'm not sure if they're there yet. But actually, it looks like he is up on Basketball Reference. Let's see. 6'10" is what they're listing Ighodaro on Basketball Reference. So, yeah, I'd like to see him be a better rebounder than that. I do think that he seems to be smart. He made a couple of good passes, made a couple of really, really bad passes, and I just don't know that there's going to be a lot of passing on the move for him, but it seems like something that, because he talked about it himself in a post-game interview, it seems like something that they want him to be capable of doing. Because he is tall, he's big, but he's also pretty quick when he has the ball in his hands. So if you could find ways to utilize that speed, then you kind of get over some of the lack of like beefiness and size when it comes to him playing center, because speed will help him out a lot as well. But overall, I think offensively, he clearly fits on an NBA team with what he does, because he screens, he rolls, he hands the ball off, he catches lobs, he can cut at the right times. He's got all the skills that normal bigs have in an offensive system, and I think it's helpful for him, as we talked about multiple times, that in Marquette, they ran a lot of that stuff. I do think he's probably sent Tyler Kolek a text after that game saying, "Hey, I miss you." I miss you, bud, because man, Kolek was setting him up really nice at Marquette, and he didn't.
No, I know. He didn't have a single guy in game one, so hopefully someone can set him up a little bit better in these next 3 games. But yeah, that's a funny point.
What do you want to see in the next game out of these guys? For me, I want to see Ryan Dunn shoot more, just a little bit more, and I think Ighodaro more of the same. I think would be helpful with maybe some more rebounds.
Yeah, I want to see Oso. It's hard with Oso because, like, on the one hand, he tried that floater a few times. He really loves the floater,
including he does like push shots from the hook. They're kind of half push shots, half hooks that he loves to do, where he turns his shoulder and then kind of turns his body as he shoots it. It's not quite a hook shot, but yeah, he loves those.
So I don't really know how I feel about it yet. I think it's one of those things where I just have to watch him for 20 or 30 games on the Suns, and then, like, being a guy who watches him every minute of his career, I'll have a very strong opinion on it eventually one of these days. right now I kind of feel split between like, yeah, dude, you got to take that shot because if that's going to be your range as an undersized center, that's going to really allow you to stick around. And like that's a rare shot for bigs to have in the NBA. You don't see a lot of like floater kings.
Yeah.
But another part of me is like, dude, just take another step and fucking dunk it. You know what I mean? Like, you don't have to settle for the floater. So we'll see. Well, I'm not sure where I land on that yet. Um, I kind of feel bad because like I know we're supposed to be evaluating the rest of these guys, and maybe the rest of these guys are fighting for the last two-way spot. But part of me is just like play these guys 35 minutes,
Yeah.
and David Roddy sit on the bench, please.
Yeah.
And so I don't know. Jalen Bridges, I hope Jalen Bridges gets more than 18 minutes in these next few games. I need to see him play. I really want to see the 3-and-D skill set on display for him.
Yeah, I found myself just not even realizing he was on the court at some points of the game.
Right. Which is a damning indictment of the lack of guard play, though.
Yeah, that's kind of not his fault. Exactly. I don't blame him for that because he's not there to be like this offensive threat handling the ball or anything like that. It's just I just found myself going, oh, that's Jalen Bridges out there. That's the guy that's out there. So yeah, I'd like to see him get the ball a little bit more. I think these guards are capable of playing better. Like you said, the ball deferring into David Roddy's hands is tough. It's also tough to put David Roddy at the corner, like you said, because they're not going to guard him. So I don't know, maybe less David Roddy minutes in general would be helpful. That's what we're asking for. But yeah, anything else on Summer League?
I don't think so. I think that just about covers it. But I will say, actually, I think we have a good segue here in the sense that you're talking about for Oso to be successful, kind of playing faster and playing with more ball movement is what you were talking about a second ago, right? I think that kind of segues really well into this next discussion that we're about to have about the Suns next season.
Our friend Kellan Olson was in Las Vegas, not for Summer League, but for Team USA, because Team USA had a scrimmage against Canada in Las Vegas before they left for the Olympics. And Kellan wrote an article where he had an exclusive one-on-one interview with Kevin Durant, where Kevin Durant opened up about what he didn't like about the Suns offense last year. And I want to say, first of all, shout out to Kellan because this was great. I think asking a player about a report that was sourced but not a revealed source is not the easiest thing to do sometimes. And I think somebody who can be as prickly as Durant about reports that don't really have a name on them is particularly difficult to get this kind of thing out of them. But he did it. I mean, Kellan got KD to open up and talk a little bit about this. Now, I'm not sure how much he gave us, and we're going to break it down in just a second. But we spent a lot of time talking about the fact that immediately after the season ended, we had a report about Frank Vogel and about how Kevin Durant didn't like how the Suns were playing offensively, how he wanted a different play style. And we never got anything from Durant about that, whether it was the regular season or immediately after that ended. So we spent weeks saying, well, what does he want? We want to know what he wants that would be helpful in sort of analyzing his future on this team. So we got a rare glimpse into that thanks to Kellan Olson. Where do you want to start, Sam?
I'm tempted to start by really throwing shame on the name and the legacy of Shams Charania. Because a lot of where this came from, and I think you know where I'm getting at with this, a lot of where this came from is Shams's new strategy, it appears, which is to wait. He pre-writes, we even hear Kellan talk about this on our playback sometimes, talking about, the inside baseball, writing skeletons is what they do in web journalism, like write a little bit of a piece, and then eventually when the news comes out, you already kind of have it pre-filled out and you just have to insert some details. The way that Shams implements that strategy, though, is particularly nefarious because what he does is it seems like he gets all this dirt on a team and gets ready to hit send, but doesn't hit send until that team is officially eliminated from the playoffs in April or May or June, whenever it is. And then 5 minutes after that team is eliminated, says, okay, here's all the dirt. Here are the juicy narratives that the vultures want. And let's cause a maximum amount of chaos.
And then
And the
here
way
are
he
the
did it,
updated odds for the title next year.
yes. Um, so the way we saw that manifest with the Suns, obviously, because the Suns were one of the first casualties of this because they got swept in the first round. But it happened, it felt like with most teams that got eliminated this year, it's like, oh, your team just got eliminated. Here's all the turmoil actually that's going on in the locker room. And a lot of it is just bullshit and not true. In the case of the Suns, though, it was stuff about like, sources are saying that Kevin Durant is frustrated with the amount of time that he's spending in the corner. And of course, Kevin Durant never came out and said this openly. But suddenly there was the ability for all of us to kind of like question it, right? There was that, and part of it is on us too, to maybe not like jump to conclusions, but there was this air of doubt about Kevin Durant for a few weeks there in Phoenix, it felt like. And we even, had the conversations collectively, the collective we, about like, should the Suns trade Kevin Durant? And
Yeah.
if
It
they
was
traded
on
Kevin Durant,
First Take. It was on Undisputed, right? That's what they led
yes,
with
yeah,
the next day.
it
Yeah.
got everywhere. And a lot of it is because to make the insinuation that Kevin Durant wasn't happy with his place in Phoenix, even if Kevin Durant himself never said anything, was so easy because like there was a lot at stake for KD to be in Phoenix, and they had just had a really disappointing playoff outcome, right? So like it wasn't a big leap for someone like Stephen A to then run with it and say, hey, the Kevin Durant's not happy in Phoenix. The Suns are trying to get out, or whoever else said that in that period of a couple weeks on national TV. It wasn't just Stephen A, but I forget exactly who else it was.
Yeah.
Wilbon, maybe? Was it Wilbon?
He hinted at stuff. Yeah.
Yeah. So shame on Shams because that's the first thing. Because there is an enormous, enormous difference between KD doesn't like being put in the corner and the insinuation there being that KD is demanding more touches, right? Because 99 times out of 100, when a player says, especially a star player, I shouldn't be put in the corner. You shouldn't be put me in the corner like this. We saw this exactly with Goran Dragic, actually, with the Suns 10 years ago. The message there is usually, don't put me in the corner. Let me cook with the ball in my hands instead. What KD is actually saying, what we got clarification and confirmation on this week is, yeah, he was frustrated sometimes with the fact that he was in the corner. He was also frustrated at times when it was Book or Beal in the corner. And the reason wasn't because he wanted to cook more in ISO. The reason was because he felt that there wasn't enough movement in Frank Vogel's offense, that all of them collectively were just standing around. And he even said, quote, we just stood around. I think you could make more options, or we could have had more movement in our offense. He said that. He didn't say Vogel's name, but it's obvious like that's who the criticism is levied towards. There is a huge difference between him saying that and him being like, let me cook in the post, or let me cook, let me do my mid-range Hezi Jimbo, whatever. Like that's how we're going to win.
Which if he did want to do, he wouldn't say that anyway, but yes.
That's true. But to hear KD come out and clarify, and I understand maybe it's not on him that he has to do this. It's not like there's anything in his contract that says he has to be a good communicator. But man, it's awesome when he actually does throw us a bone and communicates openly about something, because now we can be like, now, first of all, we can hold all of them accountable. We can also hold Coach Bud accountable and the front office accountable, because here's Kevin Durant. Here's your star player saying, let's move more off the ball. He's saying not necessarily that he wants more touches on the ball, but that if you're going to, I mean, I'm sure he still wants a good amount, right? But like, if you're going to use him off the ball, don't just stick him in the corner. Maybe use him more as a screener involved in Bradley Beal ball screens or Devin Booker ball screens, something we barely ever, if ever, saw last year in Frank Vogel's offense, or have him running off more staggered screens. Just generate more off-ball movement in general is something we've sort of been begging for. And again, just totally different to this concept of like, let's all just cook in ISO and everything will be fine and we'll bury our heads in the sand. I was really, really glad to see this article and this clarification.
I was too. It wasn't just too that he was talking about him standing around. He talked about Book, saying Book was in the corner a lot, or Brad was sitting around a lot. Let me just read it. If we're struggling on offense and the ball's not moving and your best players aren't being put into position or in space to showcase their skill, that's with anybody. He didn't like when Book was sitting in the corner or when Brad was sitting around a lot. We just stood around. I think you could make more options, or we could have had more movement in our offense. To say I was frustrated about that, that's just basketball thing that we always feel. We're trying to figure it out. Style of play is not something that I'm pissed off at the team about. It's just like, yo, we need to figure it out and get better. And then he went on to talk about Mike Budenholzer a little bit and about his experience, his 20 years coaching, and about what he could do to help make it better. But that was, I think, the main meat of it that I wanted to talk about, because it's not about him standing in the corner, but it's clear that he didn't like standing in the corner. But he didn't want to say, I didn't like standing in the corner. I also didn't like Book standing in the corner. I also didn't like Brad standing in the corner. Part of me is like, if all three of you are on the floor at one time and Nurkic isn't standing in the corner,
Well, it's a good point.
one of you is going to be standing in the corner on
no, it's
at least some of those plays.
It's a good point. Someone is going to have to stand in the corner sometimes, right? So there's compromise to be had here. But I also think you can go back and look at Vogel's offense and certainly say that there wasn't enough off-ball movement in that, and there weren't enough compound actions involving at least two of the
absolutely.
big three at once. And so it kind of depends. Like if KD is just like, yo, the three of us are making $100 million, don't put any of us in the corner. Well, it's like, okay, sometimes one of you guys has to stay in the corner. But if he's talking about like the whole, just the fact that there could be more movement in their offense in general, then I'm entirely on board.
He's right.
With what he's saying.
Well, I think there's this perception of Kevin Durant that he didn't like how the Warriors played. Right? That's like what people say. I don't think he's ever said it. There's star players like Durant and LeBron. I think there's a lot put on them based on assumptions or some reporting that is not necessarily reporting. There's just a lot out there about that. So the assumption is that he didn't like that. Well, the Warriors don't do a lot of that. Now, they do have guys in corners, but when they have two star players off the ball, those star players are often screening for each other, running sort of bunch screen actions where split actions where they're screening for each other off the ball to try to find more space for them to be better. By the way, you will remember, Sam, something I asked for a lot throughout the regular season and something they rarely ever ran was an actual split action with actual screening. It was often if the ball got into the post, they just stood there. And if he's wanting them to screen and move around a lot more, that's more like the Warriors. So if the assumption is he wants them to play more like the Warriors did when Kevin Durant was on the Warriors, I absolutely agree with him on that one. There's just this thought that that's not what he thought. And I'm really curious if we could get some more on this. But the fact that he even was willing, I think, to go on the record saying that he didn't like stuff that was happening last year, I think is good.
Huge
We
step.
didn't either. I didn't like
Big
it.
character growth.
You didn't like it. A lot of Suns fans didn't enjoy it. I honestly was surprised to see that this article by Kellan didn't have 2,000 likes of people and a lot of discourse around it when it was first posted, because this was almost a week ago at this point. No, we didn't have a chance to record to talk about it until now. But it's just, I think, a rare glimpse into real basketball talk by someone who was actually frustrated about it. He is trying to downplay it in saying that it's just a basketball thing to feel frustrated, which I believe. But the reporting was right based on what he said, in that he wasn't really happy about the offense. And maybe he wasn't happy about standing in the corner. He didn't really say that, but he didn't like star players standing in the corner. He's one of those star players. I think it's probably true that he didn't particularly enjoy that either. If this means that he's fully on board for an offense with way more movement, and that it includes by him off the ball, that's really, really, really good news for the Suns, because that could make them a much, much more potent offensive team, especially when they have lineups that don't necessarily have point guards on the floor. Because that's how you get guys open without relying on a point guard to just drive and pull guys off of other guys and then pass impossible passes to get them open. There's other ways to do it if you're willing to move around off the ball. And I agree with that. I hope that's something that is implemented next year.
I mean, something you and I have talked about, I think both publicly and behind the scenes, is that the Suns, despite being a 49-win team last year, were just not very fun to watch. And a lot of that was probably a product of our expectations. But as we talk about, like, what can they do to make a better product for the fans, not just to be a better team, but to be more exciting to watch, I think any fan would tell you that more movement is right there at the top of the list, right? It's not, I don't think there's an inherent hatred by the fan base against like all of the mid-range shots that Book and Beal and KD take. Like certainly I'm on their case about I want them to play a modern offense. I want them to shoot more threes, yada yada. But like if you're moving, I can live with more mid-range shots at least. And I think like you're probably going to generate more threes too, just by virtue of having more movement in your offense. But when you have more movement and then you bring in like at least one traditional point guard in Monte Morris, so now you have that one option to run that traditional offense on your roster. And the rest of the time, you know, you won't have a point guard, but that's okay. It's still better than last year. And then you add the athleticism of Dunn and Oso, who can play on the weak side of plays and like finish lobs and dunks and like get out in transition and just like bring an energy, bring an excitement to the offense that wasn't felt at all last year. You combine all of this stuff together and you start to get like, yes, I think they're going to be they could be a much better team. But I also just think they're going to be way more fun to watch. Like, you know, maybe this is just falling for the hype machine and all of the quotes that one hears about in July in the offseason. But like the way these guys are talking, if KD's moving more, if Ryan Dunn can shoot that thing and he's getting out there in transition, if Monte Morris averages 8 assists and 1 turnover a game, like this could be an awesome offense that actually clicks in a way we never saw last year under Vogel.
I think so the point about Iguodala being able to catch lobs is actually an important one, because something we asked for a lot last year was Kevin Durant screening for Booker or Beal. We didn't get much of it at all. In fact, I would say that we probably got more of Devin Booker or Bradley Beal screening for Kevin Durant than the other way around. But one of the reasons I think we didn't really get that is because Nurkic in the dunker's spot is tough because he's not a dunker. So, like, if you have a scenario where you're utilizing Kevin Durant as a screener, you can't put Nurkic out in the corner because we can't shoot. Maybe they're going to get him to shoot this year, right? We've talked about that with Bud, and I think his thumb injury really impacted his release last year. But if he's not shooting, which I'm going to say that he's probably not, he's standing in the dunker spot. That's usually the spot where you get guys to catch lobs. And the fact that the Suns didn't really have a good option where Durant, if he caught it in the middle of the floor and the defense was coming off of the dunker spot guy because they were trapping Devin Booker, well, now you get a free lob to the rim. Nurkic is going to botch that like at least 45% of the time, maybe more. And that's not a good scenario for the team as a whole, even if that's something that we wanted to see more. So having an option in Iguodala, or maybe even Dunn, I'm not sure if he's got that single step leap ability the way Iguodala does, but having someone that is capable of catching the ball in that scenario and putting it down when you only really have a split second to do it, I think is really helpful, because they just didn't have that last year. Or maybe even Plumlee could be better at that. It doesn't take much to be better at that than Nurkic was last year. It's just it's another reason why I'm surprised he's still on the team. I think his screens are completely underrated and undersold by the Suns fan base in general. And I think with a more proper offense, you could utilize those screens in an even better way. Really helpful for Devin Booker, really helpful for Bradley Beal. So, you know, he does have value. He's a good passer. We talked about that all last year. But that one part makes it difficult to do the types of things that we've been asking for in the past. And having another option that may not be as good overall, like on the aggregate, as Nurkic could potentially be for the team, but gives you an option when teams are defending you a certain way, would be really helpful. I'm not sure if Iguodala could be that guy as soon as this year, but at least they have someone who can.
Sounds like you're begging for Walker Kessler again. Not actually. I'm joking.
Now they'll just foul him and he'll shoot 45% from the free throw line.
That's basically what Nurk did post All-Star break last year.
That's true.
Look, I think what the front office is probably telling themselves in response to what you just said is they brought in Plumlee, who is not what he was 3 or 4 years ago, but is still a better leaper than Eubanks. And yes, they drafted Oso partially based on his ability to jump off of 2 feet and the fact that he had one of the better verticals in his class. And so, yeah, he can fill that role too. But you still wonder if, you know, how much organizational investment is there in Nurk at this point, right? Because if he's still starting come October, then you're still playing 25 to 30 minutes a game of a guy who, you know, can't do those things, right? So how much of a priority is it to get a guy who can either catch lobs or shoot threes? It feels like maybe Nurk's easiest path to being more in line with what a Budenholzer system demands at this point is just for him to shoot threes. but maybe they could still trade him before October, November. Who knows?
Yeah. He said, I'll know more once we get out on the floor, Durant, but we did win 49 games last year. He's on that company line, Sam. They're all very proud of those 49 games. It was a discombobulated season, guys in and out. We didn't have quite a rhythm on the offensive side of the ball. Defensively, we were still trying to figure out stuff, and we were still able to win 49 games our first year together. He said, it's not the first time I've come into a season and people were like, yo, your team is shit. You know what I'm saying? Your team underachieved. So it'd be good to kind of play with that little chip on our shoulder as well. So overall, happy to see him talk about it. Happy to see him be open with Kellan Olson. And shout out to Kellan Olson for getting this out of Durant. Any other thoughts before we move on to Team USA?
I like hearing the chip on the shoulder thing. I know every NBA player says that, but like, look, if it's KD and Book, I think they need to be better in some small ways. The guy I want with a chip on his shoulder is Bradley Beal because, bro, your value tanked so hard last year. You went from people thinking of you still as a top 30 NBA player to just being a punchline by the final game of that sweep, honestly. And he's got a lot of value to make up this season, but I hope he can do it.
All right. Team USA played another exhibition game, this time against Australia. Devin Booker was relegated to a bench role in a different starting lineup for Team USA, which they, according to Steve Kerr, planned on changing things up a little bit and mixing and matching the starters, probably partially for strategic purposes, partially for ego purposes, I imagine. There's a lot of really good star players on this team. Maybe the best Devin Booker Team USA game we've seen in a long time. Just a really good game overall. Finished with 16 points. Was 7 for 7 in free throws, basically to end the game. 6 free throws to end the game, and one that he had in the first half was all the free throws that he shot. And he was just very good overall. As a team, I think it's an interesting conversation to talk about where he should be or what his role should be on this team. I know you weren't able to watch these two FS1
scrimmages,
games. Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
I'm curious if you, because I have a lot of thoughts about this Team USA team in general. Who would you start? I know you haven't watched, so without watching, if you had to choose the starters on this team, what would you do? Because in the two games so far, the three starters that started in both games, Steph, LeBron, and Embiid. The two other guys switched out. In the first game, it was Drew and Book. In the second game, it was Anthony Edwards and Jason Tatum.
Interesting. So, first of all, are we assuming KD maybe just isn't going to play at some point?
I think he will.
Okay, I think he will too.
So he's going to start, right?
Right. That's kind of my point. Is assuming KD's good in time for the real games. Then I think like you got to start. First of all, you got to start the three players that everyone's there to see: Steph, LeBron, KD. Everyone's there to see those three guys team up. That's the whole purpose for why people are there.
Yeah.
Beyond that, I would start Book in the two guard slot over Ant, just because I think Ant makes more sense for the bench and Book makes more sense for the starting lineup as like maybe a slightly lower usage but jack of all trades type guy in that team. And the way he functions, and like he's gonna take fewer shots per minute on a permanent basis compared to Ant, I mean, but like when his shots are falling, he's gonna have games like he had today where he scored 17 points on 7 field goal attempts or something like that. So yeah, I'd probably go Steph, Book, LeBron, KD. Where it gets tough is do I want to go with Anthony Davis, who probably is a guy that I like more? Or do I want to go with Joel Embiid, who is admittedly more talented at the
offensively?
I mean, as an overall player.
AD is a better defender, though.
Yeah, he is. But Embiid is probably just a better player.
Yeah, I mean, he won an MVP.
In their respective careers. Yeah.
Yeah.
I think by starting Embiid, you accomplish two things. One, you're going to be playing Serbia in the first game. And so I think that's a matchup where you want Embiid, and although Embiid has kind of ducked those matchups, interestingly enough, against Jokic in the regular season, it's been one that he's often not there for. But I think you're probably better suited to play Embiid versus just a guy in a different weight class in Anthony Davis. And I think you also accomplish maximum trolling of the French people by starting Joel Embiid, which is something I would consider too.
I think
Where are
it's
you on Team USA starting five?
it's interesting because Anthony Edwards had 11 points in the first quarter, and then I'm not sure he scored after that. Just kind of turned into a bricklayer for the rest of the game. Eventually, towards the end of the game, when they took the starters out and they sort of let the bench guys finish the game with Booker on the floor, they played Booker and Ant together. So Ant, I think his destination is probably off the bench. That's his destiny, right? That's probably what's going to happen with this team. I don't think he's going to start for this team. I even think there's a chance it's Drew Holiday and Steph in the guard spots to start, just so they could have a defender in there. He's not the greatest off-ball player, but his defense really helps them get in transition, something we talked about on Patreon, which this team is just unbeatable in transition. So I find myself waffling back and forth whether or not Book should be the main guy off the bench, because they in this game, when the bench came in, they did like sort of a hockey change, right? There's a whole new lineup here. It was Book, Drew Holiday, Halliburton, Anthony Davis, and Bam Adebayo.
Oh, that's an interesting five.
So in that five,
No wings.
Booker is the scorer in that group. You know what I mean? Like they're all good at scoring. Don't get me wrong. Like Halliburton, obviously,
for sure.
They're all 20 plus points per game scorers.
Well, Halliburton can easily pull up into threes, but the way that he plays, like he prefers to get other guys going. I feel
and Booker is just a better scorer. Like throughout their time in the NBA, Booker has just averaged more points. You know, Hallie's young; he could be a better scorer later in his career, but right now Booker's clearly the guy in that lineup. And I think it benefited those lineups to Booker did not play like that at first. I think he was deferring, and sort of it sort of clicked at some point that, oh, I need to be, probably something said at halftime, I need to be a guy taking more shots with this team. And the thing about Anthony Edwards, I should say, is that there are times where he looks so awesome, and then there are times where he just turns back into a pumpkin, right? It looks so bad where he's just throwing up bricks and he's looking off guys. And when you're on the Timberwolves and you're looking off Kyle Anderson, you know, fine.
When you're looking off LeBron James,
but you're looking off Steph Curry.
Yeah,
you're looking off LeBron James in those lineups. And, you know, you can say that, well, that would probably be okay if he's coming off the bench. And I think you could be right about that. But part of me also thinks, well, if it goes bad when he's off the bench and that lineup has that little of offense, they really need that defense to be clicking. Because if it goes badly when he's with the starters, well, now you got Steph and LeBron, who, by the way, have not been great either. We're talking about Embiid hasn't been great. LeBron looks pretty old right now. I have a feeling he's saving it for the games that count. Like, I'm not going to get mad at LeBron for not looking great in an exhibition game at his 10th Olympics or whatever he's at this point. You know, I'm not going to get mad about that. But doesn't look great so far. But if it doesn't look good when he's with the starters, you have other players to insulate him. And, part of me wonders if maybe it is better if Booker is asked to do a little bit more offensively. All of it's probably going to make a little bit more sense when Kevin Durant's back, assuming he will, because we don't really know if and when
he fills in. It's the fact that, Kawhi dropped out too, right? And they replaced him with Derek White, who's just, by the way, did Derek White play in the scrimmage?
No, I don't know that he's going to play. He's Keldon Johnson this year, basically. Right?
I mean, he's clearly the Christian Laettner, the 12th guy on this roster. Like, I'm not sure he should play, but it's just interesting that Kawhi drops out and they don't replace Kawhi with a wing, because now, KD's not playing, and like you kind of have a dearth of wings on this team all of a sudden. I'll just say this about LeBron. If LeBron, I haven't watched the scrimmages again, so I don't know how old he looks, but like if LeBron goes down, the ship goes down with LeBron. Steve Kerr is not pulling LeBron James out of these games if he looks bad. Like that's just not an adjustment he's going to make. The entire basketball ecosystem globally revolves around LeBron James. Everyone's there to watch LeBron James. It's like the team's going to go as far as, no, realistically, LeBron could be horrible and they could still spank, like South Sudan and Puerto Rico and whatever. But I don't think LeBron's just going to be like, okay, Coach Kerr, give me 6 minutes a game, and like I'll just make an appearance, and then like he wants to play, he wants to be out there for a substantial portion of the game, and be receiving a substantial amount of touches and everything in the offense. So if he actually looks bad, it could look pretty ugly at times, but I think he'll get it together.
Well, I think that's one of the reasons KD will help that starting lineup so much, because it's tough, because when you look at the starting lineup in general, if you're starting with Steph, LeBron, and Embiid, you don't have anyone that's like a consistent rim pressure. Now, LeBron can do that, but he can't do that in the way that he was. Like we talked about it on a recent podcast. Bradley Beal and Devin Booker drove more than LeBron did last year, and we were complaining about how little those guys were driving in comparison to previous years. Like LeBron's just not really doing that on a consistent basis. And we know Steph, that's not really his game. He can do it occasionally, but he's just leveraging the defense because of his spacing to get to the rim. It's not like he's just one step passing up guys on the perimeter and then, getting to the lane and then finding guys with passes. So like part of me is like, well, you put Ant in there. He can do that. He's got that first step. Nobody has a faster first step than Ant right now on that team. He's the guy that can do that better than anyone. So part of me is like, yeah, you put him in there. You have that rim pressure. You have somebody capable of doing that. It's just the decision making doesn't click with the ability yet. And I think it will at some point for Anthony Edwards. There were times, because it did in the playoffs, like when he had a team that he played with a lot. It still wanes and goes away at times. And I think it will at some point, but he's just not quite there yet, where that rim pressure also helps out everyone else on the team. It's just like if the shot's falling, he's really beneficial. If the shot's not falling, he hasn't looked great. It kind of looked like they did 2 years ago when he played on that team with Mikal Bridges, where they lost. You kind of need him to be better than that.
Yeah, but it's not going to look that bad. It's not
no,
going to be
because they have so much other
2022.
guys to insulate
Dude,
him. Yeah.
Could you imagine if they suffered a similar result after like assembling the Avengers in this fashion?
Right.
That would be horribly embarrassing. I think they'll be okay. Maybe there are some guys that they could have added to this roster, if they just wanted better rim pressure though, right? Like I don't know. Like I like Hallie a lot. I think Hallie provides some rim pressure. They maybe could have added Jalen Brunson. I know that was something that, a lot of people went back and forth on. I don't know. Did like Jaylen Brown deserve a spot over Derek White?
Yes.
That's like, yeah, he does.
Absolutely, yes. I think it's weird. We don't have to talk about that too much, but yes, he's better than Derek White at basketball. He just had a finals MVP.
He is better than Derek White at basketball, but like, should he play? If Jaylen Brown is on the roster right now,
like Derek White would probably, yeah, that's true. Derek White's okay not playing, is what you're saying, right?
Right. Like, is Jaylen Brown just going to sit there and not play? And if he does play, I think his lows, well, I'm not even sure I would say this. I was going to say his highs aren't as high as Anthony Edwards, but his lows are probably higher. But I'm not even sure that's true. Jaylen Brown can look pretty fucking disastrous.
They're pretty similar, actually. That's kind of interesting. They're pretty similar in their play style, yeah.
Yeah, I just don't know who was the guy that Team USA could have really selected to be like, okay, you're not gonna dominate the ball for us, but when you do, you're gonna be like a ridiculously high level slasher. I'm not sure that guy exists in the USA program.
And it's not just that. I really wish you could have watched these games. You'll be able to catch up to it once you are able to watch them. But one of the other things they're missing, and I think in pretty dramatic fashion, is just how often, specifically Australia, was able to load up defensively and come off of the guys in the weak side corners. Like LeBron can make that pass. There's really not a lot of other guys that are currently making that pass pretty well against NBA level defense, which is what like Australia and other teams in this tournament will be capable of bringing.
I know a guy who can make that pass, but everyone hates him, and I'm not sure if he would have turned Team USA down if they even asked him. But do you know who I'm thinking of?
No, who?
James Harden can make that pass.
Yeah, that's true.
He's over the hill, but he can still make that pass. I don't know if they approached him even for this time.
Probably
Has James Harden played? Like, when was the last time he played for Team USA?
It's been a while. Yeah, it's been a while. But the other guy I think that I was thinking about from previous Olympics was Chris Paul, and just how much Chris Paul did for those teams in the past, where like they were so specifically the LeBron teams, because LeBron would start. Chris Paul often came off the bench in these scenarios. Chris Paul would just come into the game and run pick and rolls with whoever the backup center was and just generate offense over and over and over and over again. And, right now, if you say they have guys who can do that, we're talking about Halliburton. But the thing is, because he's the guy, right? He's the Chris Paul on this team. I don't want to be the old guy here saying this, but like it's different in how they play, in that the way Chris Paul generated offense, because that pull up three was so low on the totem pole of what Chris Paul was trying to do, and getting into the lane and getting into the paint was so high on the totem pole of what he was trying to do. He generated so much offense for other guys because he wasn't trying to be that first option in those plays. And often when you talk about these guys who are running the pick and roll offense, but the pull up three is so high on the spectrum of what they're trying to do in that play, it doesn't quite generate offense for other guys in the same way. Now, overall, over the course of a season, over the course of a longer extended period of time, that's still going to be a pretty good offense for a lot of these guys. But in this sort of short-term scenario where you're finding ways to maximize the guys around you, Halliburton does not have the same impact as a young Chris Paul did on these Team USA teams. And it's not to say that he can't get there, but it is kind of feel like there's just not one of those guys for Team USA. Jokic is that for Serbia too. There are other players that are capable of generating offense out of nothing. And LeBron was that for so long for Team USA, and he's not really that anymore. So, I don't know that there's even a young guy on deck who can do that as far as American guys like 4 years from now. They're going to rely on drives by Anthony Edwards. Is that what it's going to be?
It might be Cooper Flag, bro. He's
maybe
got next. I think literally is going to be our answer to, Wemby. And we'll see. That's a lot of pressure for him. But, for a long time, it was like Zion was supposed to be that guy for Team USA, kind of like holding it up for the next generation. And that obviously didn't pan out. He's still great, but it just didn't pan out. You got Ja, right? Is there he's a wild card, but has Ja played for Team USA yet?
I think he played for the selects team a few years ago, if I'm not mistaken.
All these guys, like I can't remember. Harden, I had to look it up, by the way. He played on the 2012 Olympic team, but not since. And a lot of these guys, I'm not sure if it's because they're turning down offers. Like James Harden easily could have played on the 2016 team if he wanted to, I would think. It's like, were they turning down offers or are they just hated by the coaching staff? I'm not sure. And Ja Morant is another one of those guys where I'm not sure. But yeah, it's becoming more and more difficult. We can't just go into this competition and dominate everyone anymore. And there needs to be some actual cohesion, to your point, and hopefully they can slap enough of it together in the short term.
Wednesday, 9 a.m. Arizona time. Serbia. This is another showcase game, right? So it's not an official Olympic game. Then they have South Sudan and Germany, and then the actual Olympic games start July 28th against Serbia again. So another difficult game, but they have a chance to see Serbia ahead of time. And that group that they're in the Olympics has South Sudan, Puerto Rico, and Serbia. So overall, they need to get past that Serbia game. And like you said, anything can happen in individual games. But you kind of need them to play well, really well, and absolutely dominate South Sudan and Puerto Rico so that Serbia game feels like the big challenge for them. I'm going to watch as much as I can of the Olympics and these showcase games so that we could talk about specifically Devin Booker and Kevin Durant as they play, but Team USA as a whole. We also have to say the Suns schedule for Summer League, since we're talking about actual basketball coming up. If you're listening to this Monday night, Tuesday, July 16th, 1 p.m. Mountain Standard Time. That's in the middle of the day and against the Pacers for a Summer League game. If you can watch that, watch that. I'm going to try to watch that one. And then Wednesday, July 17th, we're going to do this one on playback against the OKC Thunder. That's 5 p.m. Arizona time. And then Friday, July 19th, another middle of the day game against the Bucks for the Summer League. And that's at 1 p.m. Arizona time. I'm excited to watch as much of those as I can, particularly to see the young guys with the Suns and, of course, Devin Booker and KD. Anything else that you want to add before we wrap up here, Sam?
Should probably let the people know that I will be going out of the country for a week starting next week, so we may be taking a week off. Yes. But expect a Patreon episode from us this week after a couple more summer league games, so we can talk about those just before I leave. And then maybe a week off before we're back, just as the Olympics are starting towards the end of July.
That's right. All right. Well, thank you everyone for listening. Back with a Patreon episode before Sam gets out of town. We appreciate you all.
For over a century, Johnny Walker has shared its bold spirit with the game of golf. Now, crafted with Devereaux Golf, Johnny Walker introduces the Johnny Walker Blue Label-inspired Sunday Golf Bag, elevating the game with sleek design, Blue Label hues, and refined gold accents. Celebrate your hole-in-one with a premium Sunday bag crafted by Devereaux Golf. Submit proof of your achievement to johnnywalker.com/blue-in-1. Please drink responsibly.